right? So this series of videos are going to be documentaries of me going from, solving very easy algorithm and data structure problems to solving ninja level shit. So sorry for that. If forgive my French. Anyway, so I wanted you guys to come on this journey with me. So how these videos are going to go, I'm going to read up on stuff. I'm going to explain those things the way I understand them. There's this data structures and algorithms. I'm going to try to solve problems with these data structures and algorithms, and then I'm going to go live every Friday, hot seat level typer, you know. And yeah, I'm just going to get I'm going to have to like view a question I haven't like seen before. So that means you can tell I haven't seen it before because on LeetCode it's going to show that I have not made any submissions for that particular question. And well, you can trust that I haven't read the question either. That part I think you just have to trust me, right? And I'm just going to solve those problems. I'll probably fail a lot, but hopefully I'll get better with time. And I would also like to really invite you guys to come join me on those Friday evenings by 5 p.m. and we could solve these problems together, right? I could come up with a solution and you guys could come up with a different solution, and I would like to see that on the comment section. And I would like us to, talk about it, talk about our solutions. If I don't get the solution and someone else gets the solution, hooray! That's what I want this channel to be about. I want to grow on this channel and kind of document it. So I wasn't sure how to go about with the videos and stuff like that, but I think that what's most important for this series of videos are actually the coding, right? That's why the interface is just going to be showing my VS Code, and I'm going to be talking about like the ideas and like the data structures and the algorithms the way I understand them. And if there's something about what I've said that you think could be better, please leave a comment. That's the point of these videos, right? Okay, so I decided that the data structure to kick off with is most definitely going to be arrays, because I find arrays interesting. Before now, I always most definitely want to convert everything into arrays, right? I want to convert everything into arrays, and I want to treat everything into as arrays, and I want to solve them as an array, and then basically convert it back anyhow. I don't know. So, but arrays, they are really interesting. Arrays are like ways that you can store different types of data, right? Uh, in programming, but specifically in JavaScript, we can store strings in an array, we can store objects in an array, we can store numbers in an array, we can even store other arrays in an array, and that's fine, right? Uh, so this is how we write arrays in JavaScript. And I think one of the most interesting things about JavaScript, about arrays, is that uh, you can add items to it, you can take items from it at specific positions, you can read items from it, of course. By the way, this is not supposed to be a beginner level kind of tutorial, if you call it that, right? This is supposed to be like mid-level ish, like you understand what's going on here, and I'm not explaining what's going on here because basically we're going to be using this to solve problems. But some sort of a refresher, we can get the first item by doing this, by calling array at 0, right? And well, definitely you can also do array at 1 to get the item at position 1, and so on. And one interesting thing about arrays is that they are zero indexed. That means you start from 0, so you have 0, then 1, then 2. But then when you want to get the length of the array, you count all the items in the array. So that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, which is very funny because that's one thing that I actually find confusing sometimes, especially when I'm trying to solve a problem. I don't know why, but it's just confusing to me. Yeah. So also another thing interesting about JavaScript arrays is that some other programming languages you might have to define the length of the array before you actually start uh, creating the array, But JavaScript allows you to kind of like have like an empty array, and you can do some things like array.push to add things into this array. You can, and things like that. You can array.unshift to add it to the front of the array, and things like that, right? Yeah. So basically, if I do this and I console.log array right now, okay, give me 1 minute to find that it should be here. Yep. So I basically pushed into the end of the array, and then I pushed 2 into the front of the array. So there are also a couple of things that I find interesting that you could do with an array. You could get the last item in an array by doing something like array dot, well, you could just get it like saying array at array dot length -1. But then there was also something interesting that I found, right? And this should return, sorry, I'm so sorry. This should return 1, right? This should say 1. Oh, I am not logging last. Forgive me. Yep. And also, or rather, but also, you could also get the last item in the array by doing array.add, then having -1 here. Oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't sure how this is called. I think it's this way. Yep. Yay. So yeah, you could also get the last item in an array by doing this. Just a little clean trick, because apparently when you're going for interviews, which is usually why people learn or start to practice for algorithms and data structures, they want to see that you demonstrate fluency in the language that, in your language that you're interviewing in. So if you choose JavaScript, there are some very small, interesting things that you could do with JavaScript that could tell the interviewer that this person actually has a very strong handle on the language. The other things you could do with an array, you could convert an array to a string by just doing array dot to string. Yep, and that does that. And what else could you do? Of course, you could push and you could unshift, but you could also pop. What does pop do? Pop takes out the last element in the array. So when I pop, I take out the last element, and then now when I console.log array, it's just going to be 2 in there, right? And then I could also take out from the front. So this time I could have array dot shift rather. Yeah, and now we have an empty array. Yep, and then if you want to check the length of the array, you could do array.length to get the length of the array. Oh, we don't even need this right now because we pushed into the array, then we unshifted into the array, and we had 2 1. Then we got the element at the last position, and then we converted it to string, but we didn't actually change this particular array. We just converted it to string here, and then we removed the last item, and then we removed the first item. Now the array is empty, right? Now when we check the length should say 0. Yep. So that is the length of the array. What else could we do with arrays? There are a lot of interesting things, like crazy as insane things that we could do with arrays, and I could go on and on, but I think we should just try to solve a problem on LeetCode. We should probably try to solve an easy problem on LeetCode, and then, because right now you'd be like, okay, so how, like, where does this come in into the whole algorithm and data structure thing? So I'm going to try to use arrays to solve the problem, and then yeah, so I'm going to do that now. Okay, so we're going to try to solve this two-sum problem. So apparently two-sum is a very popular question on LeetCode. I mean, it has 32,956 likes. I think this was the first question I solved on LeetCode actually. Well, and that's why this is going to be a breeze for me, and it's going to be interesting to solve, I hope. Anyway, okay, so it says given an array of integers and an integer target, return the indices of the two numbers such that they add up to the target, right? You may assume that each input would have exactly one solution, and you may not have the same element twice. Okay, this makes the question easy for us, right? And we can also return the answer in any order. So this makes the question very, very easy for us, right? So we have a number, a list of numbers that are in an array, right? And we have the target, and basically the question is saying, okay, find two numbers, the indices of the two numbers, not the numbers itself. Return the indices of two numbers that when you add them together they give you 9. So in this particular case it's supposed to be 2 and 7, right? And the target is 9, and they return 0 and 1 because 2 is what 2 is 2 plus 7 is 9, right? And 2 is at the array position of 0, and this is at an array position of 1. And the same goes for this, right? We have 3, 2, 4, and it returns 1 and 2. So because of the fact that we know that there's only going to be one possible combination, once we find the answer, we can jump out, right, of our loop or whatever it is that we're using, right? That's great. That makes the problem much easier for us. And then we have 3 and 3, right? And the target is 6. So if we wanted to ask, if this was a real interview, we would want to ask clarifying questions, right? Such as, okay, can I assume that these numbers are always going to be integers? And I think for this particular case, okay, yeah, we can assume that they're always going to be integers. And then what other question can we ask? We can also ask if we can assume that the target is always going to be, we're always going to find the target. So, and I think this line answers, it says you may assume that each input would have exactly one solution and you may not use the same element twice. Okay, and we're supposed to return it in any order, so that's fine so far, right? Great. So what I'm thinking about doing is I have a number, right, and then I have a target 9. So what I'm thinking about doing is to find so first I go through as I'm going through this array. So if, for instance, I have two numbers, right? I have two numbers. Not for instance, that's actually what I have. I have two numbers, x plus y, which should give me 9, which should give me the target, right? Let's call the target C. So, but this time around, I have the target and I have x. I'm just looking for y, right? So at each instance here, I have 2 and have the target 9, and I'm looking for the other number, right? So y is what I'm looking for. So that's great, right? So basically, y is going to be equal to t minus x, right? Correct. But there's something else. We have to remember that we're not looking for the numbers itself. We're looking for the index of the numbers. So that means that as we are keeping the numbers, maybe we can as we are saving the numbers or whatever we're going to do with the numbers, we're also going to have to keep track of the indices, because it's actually the indices that we need, right? I hope that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but that should make sense. So what I'm trying to say is, I want to write a loop that goes through this array, and as I'm going through this array, so when I get to 2, I say, okay, do I have anything like 9 minus 2 in my, okay, so I'm going to create a map. Obviously I'm going to have to create a way to keep track of the differences in the numbers, right? So when I have 2 minus 9, or 7 minus 9, or 11 minus 9, or 15 minus 9, I'm going to have to keep track of that number, right? Rather 9 minus 1. So I'm going to have a way to keep track of those numbers. And I would have said, okay, let's just use an array and keep track of it with an array. But the problem with using an array is that when I have to check for that particular number, I have to go through every item in the array. And that should be O of n time. I think I'm jumping the gun here. I'm talking about time complexity and stuff like that. But if I'm looking for this particular, if I'm looking for this with the hash map, lookup time, let me just drop it there, right? That's when we're working with hash maps. Right? Lookup time for hash maps is O of 1, which is constant time. And if we have 2 solutions to anything, and one of the solutions is O of n and the other one is O of 1, we'll choose the O of 1, right? Yeah. So especially when the space complexity for the 2 of them is the same, right? So we also have to think about that. But I think that we can talk about space complexity and time complexity in later videos, right? Especially when I understand it more clearly. But for hash maps, the lookup time is O of 1. So basically what I'm saying is that we have to create a hash map. So here I'm just going to create variables. Then I'm going to create and then I'm going to loop through my array, and then I'm going to return results. So when I'm creating my variables, I'm going to have to think about the things that I want, right? So first of all, my output is expected to be 0 and 1, right? But what if there's a case where I don't actually find the result? I'm guessing that I'm just going to have to return an empty array. So that's actually the first thing I'm going to do here. So I already see that I have two outputs, right? And they're going to be in an array. And with the way we are currently trying to solve this problem, we're going to have our x and y at the same point. We're going to have our x and y. So there's no need to save x and then wait until we find y to save the next y, and then we can just return it at that point. So we were trying to so what I think we need though is we need to create a map, and we're going to create, I don't know why I keep saying hash maps, right? Because JavaScript doesn't really have hash maps per se, right? We just use a normal map object as hash maps. I keep making that mistake. I don't know why. Anyway, so I'm going to create I'm going to call it my solution map, and I'm going to initialize it with this new map object here. So we're looking good so far, right? And for now I think that just this is fine. So we're going to loop through this item in this array. To do that, I'm just going to use a normal, not fancy, for loop. I equals 0, I less than So there are a few things that we want to do in this array. We want to first check, okay, so at this particular, does this particular number, like when I subtract the target from this particular number, do I have that value in my map, right? So that's first check I do. So I say, okay, this number at this position, when I do target minus this number at this position, is it in my solution map? And that's getting too long, so let's just call it difference, and I'm just going to say this here, right? So I'm just going to check if solution map dot has difference. So does it have this solution? Does it have this difference? If it has the difference, then hooray, we found it, right? So we just want to return, and we're not returning in any order, so that's fine, right? So we just want to return I, and we also want to return the value at that position. So that's solution map dot get difference. So that's what we want to return. But otherwise, if we check and it's not there, what do we want to do? We want to save this difference. Right? But now that makes me think about something. Okay, just 1 minute. So we want to save. Do we want to save the difference, or do we want to, because for instance, when we have 2 and 7, right, and the target is 9. So when we're at 2, we're checking, okay, 9 minus 2. Does 9 minus 2, that's 7, does 7 exist within us? And it says no, there's no 7 here. So we're saying, okay, you know what, let's just put 2 and the position of 2. So what we're going to save here is not going to be the difference. What we're going to save here is going to be the particular item. So I'm going to use a set, and then I'm going to be setting the number at that position to the index. So yeah, I hope this makes sense. Because I have 2 and 7, right? And then I check, okay, 9 minus 2, that's 7. I check my hash map, which is like kind of empty at this point, right? And there's no 7 there, right? So I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I'm just going to put 2 and 0, right? And then I move on, and I'm like, okay, then next is 9 minus 7. 9 minus 7 now is 2. That's the difference. So it checks, okay, does 2 exist here? And it says, oh yeah, 2 exists here, and the position at that particular point is 1, right? It's 1, and it gets the value of 2 here, which is 0, 2. So that's 1 and 0. So that's what I return. Okay, I hope that this makes sense, and I didn't end up rambling so much without making sense at all. Yeah. So, but I think that this is the solution to this problem. Okay, so we need to think about some edge cases, right? So we need to think about, like, okay, what if we have an empty array? If we have an empty array, then it's not going to go into the for loop, right? It's not going to go into the for loop. It's just going to return an empty array, which is fine. Then what else? Okay. What if my target is 0? Right? What if my target is 0? We still need to go through the array, because it's possible that we have 2 zeros, in which case it's going to be 0 and 0. Okay, so now we try. We probably I would have liked to do some more tests, maybe in other videos. I am going to have more time to test this as well. I wanted to make sure I cut down the length of these videos to 30 minutes max. Don't say a lot, just say what you're about to say and leave. But I'm obviously talkative, so let's run the code first, and I think it should pass through everything easily. Yay! So that's it. Thank you so much for coming to my first ever data structure and algorithm challenge recorded online. I've solved this problem before. I think I solved it quite differently from this, but yeah, I think so, because I think my runtime is a little bit faster. Yeah. Well, if you have any questions, please ask in the comment section. If you've not solved this problem before, go over to LeetCode and try to solve it. And let me know how you solved it. If this is your first time solving algorithm problems, you're so welcome here. If this is not your first time, you're welcome too. And yeah, you're you're also so welcome, because the next few months are going to be challenging, and I want you guys to challenge me. Okay? I'm coming for your crowns. Bye.